Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
Hi. After almost 150 episodes of these, I thought I would change it up.
Change up
the intro.
It always goes well for me when I do that. Yeah.
Well, you have to actually start it. I just have to respond. And I can respond with anything.
One of these days, so I'm going to do that. I'll say, I'm Steve Gibson, and then somebody else, it'll be like, and I'm Jerry Bananas. And I'll be like, who the fuck are you?
I remember one time, and it might have been this show, or it might have been the podcast we did before, but you, started it off, and you're like, I'm Steve Gibson, and this is, you tried to introduce me. And for some reason, that irked me more than anything you've ever done. I was like, how the fuck do you know I'm Ben Matlock?
I'm taking control of who's on this.
Let me fucking clarify. I might be Ben Matlock.
What irked you is I didn't do it like, I'm Steve Gibson, and here's Ben.
I would have hated that, too. But I hated more it was like you were already prepared to cut me off. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't have that.
Set the energy right up front.
So that's why when we started a new show, I had my agent make it so I got 70%. Turns out 70% of nothing is still nothing, but one day we'll make those little shirts with my face on them.
Hey, your name comes first on the credits when I post the show, so you get that.
As it should. It's alphabetical.
Yeah.
How all titles should be done.
Also, if we ever piss somebody off so much that they're coming after us, they'll be like, whoa, this is clearly Ben's show.
All those angry creepypasta writers.
Yeah.
Form a union just to fucking bankrupt my ass. All right, welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. On the show, we tell each other stories. They could be fact, fiction, fucking whatever. Whatever's in between those two. There's a gray area for everything. So, but yeah, hi. I said that.
Well, this will be one of those gray area shows. I warned you, and I actually followed through for once. By the time the show goes up, it's October, so I have a ghost story, or ghost stories. Which, when I say in between, is because it's a real place with real history, which we'll talk about, but also ghost stories, which I think are complete bullshit. so it's both. But it's not a creepypasta, which I almost...
It's real in the sense that people really believe this shit. And by the end, you will too. And so will we.
Maybe me. Maybe I'll convince myself. I didn't as I was writing the notes, but...
It's just like, I'm such a natural storyteller. God damn.
Just be modest about it. You're like, wow. I gotta say, guys, I'm almost 40. I've never believed until
I flipped.
So, give me 1 second, because Google likes to randomly sign me out of my notes right in the middle of the fucking show. Thank you, Google. I love it because I keep, my passwords are saved because there's nothing. If you get in here, you're getting my podcast notes. Oh, God.
This show brought to you by Google Stadia. We forgot about it, too.
I just love that you'll be actively using Drive. I don't know if it happens to anybody else. I assume so. But I'll be, actively using Drive, and then it'll just randomly be like, you've been signed out, sign back in. But it's just literally click the sign-in button. It's got my password saved, and then brings it back up. It's like, what? Oh. Thanks. It's interactive.
It's a lock, but it's not a deadbolt,
Yeah, it latches, but just, stiff breeze will blow it right back open. This week I'm going to talk about the Point Lookout Lighthouse, which is a weird, that's about the most unimaginative name. And I feel like this is a place we might have at least kind of touched on. I don't think so, but we might have on one of our kind of compilation. Sometimes we do here's 8 haunted places.
I know I did one about a haunted... Well, it was about haunted locations. I think haunted islands, and I talked about a lighthouse.
It's not that one, because this isn't an island. It's a peninsula.
An island for the stars.
It's for the people that want to be scared, but not island scared. Because island scared's a whole. There's nowhere to go. At least this gives you
peninsulas. It's kind of a fun scared.
Yeah. Like you get to feel trapped, and then when you had enough, you go that one direction that's still connected to everything else. So the Point Lookout Lighthouse, and I didn't realize how hard that is to say out loud as I was typing this. It's in Maryland. It was built on a peninsula near where the Potomac River meets Hudson Bay. It's an area that originally housed one of the 3 manors owned by the territory's first governor. Because, country got off to the great start. It's like, well, we've got a territory. Here's our first governor. Let's give him 3 mansions wherever he wants.
Housing is really fucking stupid. And it started stupid. It stayed stupid in this country.
Yeah, you come over here. It's like, we might give you a plot of land to put a shed on if you do work for us, but the rich people get the country. Like, you now own the state of Ohio. Good job, Bill.
We'll give you this complimentary little shack, and they'll own you.
And heaven forbid you point out that Native Americans were here first. Be like, no, that doesn't count.
See, their problem was they didn't think they owned it. If they just said, we own this, we'd be like, all right, we have common ground with these people, in that we think we own everything, too.
I'm kind of guessing that's still not how that would have gone. But, yeah, it probably would have been better than, like, they come here and they're like, we're going to have to take this land from you. And be like, what land? We don't own the land. They're like, oh, convenient. Tell you what, in exchange for us now owning it, we'll let you own this little... I don't know. Anyway, first governor had a manor there. Its spot soon became a popular summer resort destination with beach cottages and the now iconic lighthouse being built. The lighthouse itself operated for about 135 years.
I'd love if this story took a twist where, like, instead of like a ghost story, it's just the lighthouse came alive and ate people like Jaws. But it doesn't, like, it can't eat anything. It's just a lighthouse. So it's just...
That's really, if you look up the Point Lookout Lighthouse, it's the weirdest, like, least... the thing with lighthouses are, I think me and you both kind of like them, but not in that weird, like, old woman, like, I want to collect lighthouse ceramic kind of way. But they're just neat locations because they all feel kind of haunted and like desolate and
like the movie The Lighthouse, where
exactly
we want to fuck the lighthouse like most lighthouse enthusiasts do.
I just want to beat it to a mermaid carving that I found in my pillow. I just want to
jack it into the blinding light. What a great movie.
That sizzle at the end. That's how you know it's a good finish.
That's gross.
But anyway, you picture lighthouses and you do picture these kind of like lonely but like kind of majestic towering structures. The Point Lookout Lighthouse is literally a house with like a 10-foot little like thing sticking out the top in the middle, like where a chimney would maybe go. It's like it's like the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse version of a lighthouse. It is not really impressive looking. But anyway, so that was built, and the resort was built there. The lighthouse operated for about 135 years. Because the area could be prone to fog that would last days rather than hours, manning the warning bell and lights could be difficult for one keeper and his family. So in 1883, another story was added to the home, and a second family was moved in to assist with the duties. So this is like, again, the movie Lighthouse, except instead of like two people... Yeah. You have two families going crazy, which is even better.
I was going to say, like, the only thing worse than being completely isolated somewhere is having just, like, one other group of people with you.
Yeah, and I imagine how, like, that's why I liked the movie, The Lighthouse. It's really fucking weird, but... Like, you can see that, like, how awkward and how you could, like, go crazy having to live with one person. But imagine having to being isolated with your own family. I think a lot of us have learned over the last, like, year and a half with the pandemic is difficult. Being isolated with your own family and another random family that's assigned to work with you. Holy shit. Like... But anyway, they had two families because sometimes that bell would have to be rung by hand for like 3 days straight, 24 hours a day. So that had to be fun. After the Civil War broke out, the demand for a battlefield-adjacent summer resort proved non-existent. However, the government did need a place to house all of the Union casualties, and so they leased the resort for those purposes. There they constructed what became known as Hammond General Hospital, which began taking patients in August of 1862. The first patients, again, were like Union soldiers that either got sick or wounded in the war. By the early months of 1863, a small number of Confederate prisoners were ordered to be confined to the hospital grounds as well. Most of them, it said, were like Confederate soldiers, but that were like local to the area, people that were seen as like sympathizers or traitors to the Union cause, that kind of thing. They weren't like shipping prisoners in per se, but if you had prisoners that were sick and you had this hospital, that's, they started saying, yeah, let's confine them here.
Yeah.
They blah blah blah. Same paragraph. Following the Battle of Gettysburg, however, a full-blown prison camp, was constructed at the Point Lookout by September of that same year. So this thing's only been in operation for, 63. Okay, so it's been in operation a little over a year and like a month. But by September, there was 4,000 Confederate soldiers housed at the prison camp. That number increased to 9,000 by December, so just 3 months later, it more than doubled. And by June of the following year, it had ballooned to over 20,000 prisoners. 3 separate forts were constructed around the prison camp to provide security and both keep people from getting out and, keep from being attacked. So as most of us know, wartime prison camps tend to suck. You're talking thousands of often wounded or sick soldiers or both that are forced to live in like makeshift tents in the middle of a field. Like, it wasn't like a Shawshank prison, which also sucks, but at least you're inside in a prison cell. You're basically like being forced to camp, and there's no food. Food is scarce, warmth is scarce because there's no heating. And the only thing that there's an abundance of is filth and waste, because you tend to they just have prisoners like shitting and pissing in holes in the same field that you're forced to live in with 20,000 other prisoners. Of course, the camp here at Point Lookout was no different. By the end of the war, an estimated 52,264 prisoners had been kept there. Of those, as many as 8,000 died in captivity. Those deaths often were the result of starvation, freezing, smallpox, and infection.
All so things completely out of our control.
Yeah. What could you do? Yeah. It's in God's hands. But no, they tended to be the very protracted, relatively protracted, painful, horrible, torturous. It's. You die in battle if you get your head blown off by a cannon. That sucks, but at least your head got blown off and you're dead. Dying in a prison camp as you're starving to death and freezing is a special type of hell. I don't know. I've seen pictures. There's another story that I'll eventually do. I talk about it all the time. But it also involves prisoners of war from the Civil War. And there's photos of them, and you wouldn't be able to tell if you didn't have the clothing and stuff for context. It's the same as Auschwitz or something. We weren't gassing people, but you might as well have been. You were sentencing them to horrible deaths. So it's not a good place. Unless you're trying to farm ghosts, because then it's a perfect place. You've been going on
for 5 minutes of how awful this. That was the Norm Macdonald, this guy's a real jerk thing when he's talking about fucking Hitler, Albert Fish.
Yeah, so my point is, between the long, lonely toil of lightkeeper life and their families, and the unfathomable suffering and loss from a war in general, but also a prison camp, Point Lookout is considered by many to be one of the most haunted lighthouses on Earth and one of the most haunted parks. Of course, every park that's haunted at all, if you read their stuff, is we're the most haunted.
A lot of places
how do you quantify that?
Most haunted. Well, a lot of people say that, and then they'll be oh, there are 2 ghosts here. you know, but it's like, but then you go to Gettysburg and there's like 1 million ghosts. But is it more haunted if one ghost does more shit?
That's what I mean. Like, how do you quantify? I'm sure they do, because you've got what I'm getting to next. So apparently the site was investigated by internationally renowned parapsychologist Dr. Holzer and his team of, I guess, renowned ghost investa people. You know my thoughts on these kind of investigations. But among their many findings were 24 different voices that they recorded saying things that you'd expect ghosts to say once you've crafted a random story to like fit the non-contextual words. What I mean there, I know you've watched these shows. A lot of people watch these shows. It kills me how they'll like record the white noise and they're like, if you listen back, you can hear it say, "Give me the cheese." Clearly, this little girl who was nicknamed Cheese, and the mom had they'll craft a story to fit like whatever random like sounds that you hear in white noise, which you're going to hear because it's white noise. So consider me unconvinced, but how they
it's always
how they ascertained
it's a lot. Sorry, it's always like way darker than that though. I realized like I hit my point of like absurdity with this shit when I realized like that Ghost Adventures show, which is like the best one of those shows on television because it's so fucking corny, but like they use an Xbox Kinect as their like fucking camera. It's slightly modified to see dots. I mean, so it's like they're looking at this shit like dots. The Matrix code. And then just like, oh, look how the dots moved. And I love that shit.
That's what I mean. It's kind of telling that you get better evidence the crappier like audio video equipment you use. It's like weird that you hear more stuff in the noise.
I don't get it. It's just when you get to the other side, we can only hear you on cassette tapes.
I will say I was watching, there's Expedition X, which... It's kind of a spinoff from Expedition Unknown that focuses. Expedition X is way more like it's 100% focused on paranormal stuff like Bigfoot or UFOs or ghosts or whatever. And I really only watch it because it records instead of like my DVR is set to record Expedition Unknown, but it shows up as that on the guide.
Expedition.
Yeah. But and it's got I think. Most of the people that are in our circles that listen to the show know her. Jessica Chobot. She's one of the hosts, and then some guy I've not heard of, but he's kind of funny. But anyway, it's that classic, like they set him up like the guy's the non-believer who is, it's all, the whole point is you have to have a non-believer, and then Jessica's the one that always believes in the paranormal stuff. But you've got to have the like straight man, so by the end you could be like, I don't believe in this stuff, but I gotta admit it was pretty... unexplainable. It's a scripted show, but they had this one camera that was set. It's kind of infrared, but it's set to like detect human shape. Like basically a live action stick figure shows up on the screen if it picks up a human body. Like you have the guy walk by to test it, and you can see like a stick figure version of him on the screen, and they were using that, and all of a sudden this like human shaped stick figure popped up on the screen and like walked across it and like made very human movements and disappeared. And that was one of those things that if I was in person and saw that, as much as I'm like ghosts don't exist, I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to go home now and leave. Like it was creepy. But anyway, this is not, this. They recorded, and I don't know how you ascertain that there's 24 different voices when it's always just like, rah, rah, rah. It's like, okay, well, that was a different voice than the other. Rah, rah, rah. They also felt cold spots, which is, a common thing among ghost sites. And discovered that one room had a mysterious bad odor, which is fucking hilarious to me that's one of your evidence that ghosts is this room smells bad.
Yeah, my room is super haunted. Fucking bathroom. Hey, hang on, it got really haunted in there just a few minutes ago. Give that time to unhaunt.
To be honest, that last line is the only reason I even bothered to bring up his investigation that they did on the site, because everything else is just your cliche
I can't
paranormal
stay in that
investigator.
room too long. It must be haunted. Or we've just been farting in there for hours pretending to investigate.
That's the thing. The sound man ate Taco Bell for dinner that night, but he's too embarrassed to admit to it. So he just lets him, like, yeah, ghosts, definitely ghosts.
I guess let this be a public service announcement that if all you had for dinner was Taco Bell, don't be ashamed of it. We've all been there.
Yeah, it happens. That's part of the package, and it's totally worth it. Like,
stand outside, but don't be ashamed.
But anyway, if you believe in that kind of the EMF, the voices, that stuff, the point is all that stuff, of course, triggers here. They've had seances and photos with orbs. I didn't look it up, but you probably can find it. There's supposedly a photo that they took during a seance where you could see one of the ghost of an old lady that's supposed to be a former, part of the lighthouse, one of the family members that lived there. And then see another guy in what seems to be Civil War garb, like leaning against the wall nonchalantly.
Too cool for school Civil War guy.
Yeah. So I didn't look it up, and I don't know if it's one of those that it's probably it's very easy, especially back then. I think these were done in like the 70s or 80s. The article just said about 20 years ago, but then didn't have a date on the article. So I don't know. But, with film, you had a lot of those where it's like, look, you can clearly see a human, because it was so easy to double expose a film. And now I think you get that a little less, not because it's not easy to do digitally, but because it's so easy to do digitally that it's no longer a convincing piece of evidence, because you just show a photo with like a transparent person in it and somebody's going to just say, yeah, Photoshop. So I didn't look the photo up. I don't know if it's that or if it's even one of the more ridiculous things where there's like a fingerprint smudge and you're like, if you squint, it looks like the shape of a person with a potato-shaped head. Anyway, again, my point is if you do believe in that kind of investigation of paranormal stuff, it checks all those boxes. There are, of course, other eyewitness reports that, in my opinion, are at least more interesting. That's why I do these kind of topics. Ronnie Hammett is a park ranger who worked at Point Lookout before going on to manage the site for years. He's got a number of stories. The first one I included word for word because it's a first-hand account from him. So you'll notice I shift to the first-person perspective here. This is him. I did not go there and see a ghost.
Well, one time I was shitting and then a ghost happened. It's a great story, man.
The incident I'm about to relate occurred on an unseasonably warm day in early March of 1977. I had been a park ranger at Point Lookout for only 2 months. Although mine was a new job, Point Lookout was not new to me. I had lived my lifetime of 25 years in Point Lookout area. I like it when people are giving the... I was just about to say, people do this so often when they're giving either accounts of like ghosts or UFOs, but even like... You watch the news and somebody like witnesses a crime and they want to make themselves sound more official as an eyewitness. So they try to talk like fucking Shakespeare or something. But in fairness, I say these are
30 years past birth. Like, the fuck are you saying? How old are you and where's the ghost?
Third new moon of an unseasonably violet night. Where the wind blew like a whisper.
It is pretty. I'm glad we're doing it for a nonfiction thing finally, because like, it's a reoccurring thing, and like on this show that we're always just like, just say it. Jesus Christ.
And it does kind of like it starts out like that, and I think most people realize that they can't keep that kind of storytelling up through their whole story, so it kind of shifts back into normal person speak here. But and again, I should in fairness, like I said, I copied it word for word because it was written as a first-hand account. I can't say for certain he said it and wrote it this way, or if he gave a first-hand account and the author of the article tried to like, author it up. So in fairness to this guy, maybe he didn't say this and it was, worded this way. But anyway, I was working the evening shift. It was a weekday, and despite the beautiful warm weather, there were few park visitors. At about 4:30 p.m., I was on the Potomac River beachfront gathering and recording weather data, which I didn't, as an aside, know was a park ranger job duty, but whatever. I like to think his weather data was, he looked up, I'm not wet, it's not raining. Cool. Anyway, he's gathering weather data when I noticed an elderly woman standing about 40 yards from me. She caught my attention because she was strangely shuffling along, looking towards her feet. She appeared to be desperately looking for something she had lost in the grass. After I had watched her for about 5 minutes, I walked over to offer my assistance. So fuck you, Mr. Ranger guy. Like, you sat and let this old woman shuffle around for 5 minutes, and you're like, okay, she lost her denture. I guess I'll go ask if she needs help. You're a ranger. You're there to help. Don't watch for 5 minutes. Say, what can I do? Anyway, I walked over to offer my assistance. My first thought was that perhaps she had lost her keys. She seemed very distant, and our conversation was very brief. I only remember 3 points she made. She did not need my assistance. She lived up the beach a ways, and she asked if I knew where the gravestones were that used to be where we were standing.
And she asked, where are my keys?
I said, I'm a fucking park ranger, not a metal detector. Good luck, lady. And I took off. I remember that for some reason I felt I was imposing on the woman, and not wanting to be in position, I left to walk 300 yards east to the Chesapeake Bay shore to record more data.
That's usually my response if I feel uncomfortable around a woman. If I feel like I'm being a nuisance, I walk 300 yards east.
Exactly 300 yards, so you pace it off.
Yeah.
About 5 minutes later, while I was walking back to my truck, which I had left parked near the river, I noticed that the woman had disappeared. It was then that I realized that the adjacent parking lot was empty, which is a weird statement because if she left, it would be empty. It's not. It's like, I noticed she left, but her car was still there. That'd be more weird. Anyway, parking lot was empty. Furthermore, from my vantage point since our conversation, I would have had to have seen any cars entering or leaving the area. None had. I did not conduct a search for the woman, though. I often wish I had done so. So he's like, you can tell he's new to the job because he's like, I waited a while and then asked if she needed help. She didn't seem to, so I walked 300 yards away. And when she mysteriously vanished, I probably should have looked for her, but I had weather to report. Anyway, a few hours later, I asked then park manager Jerry Sword, if he knew anything about a graveyard near the Potomac River picnic area. He wanted to know why I was asking, so I told him about my odd encounter with the old woman. After Mr. Sword heard my story, he told me that there had once been a graveyard somewhere near where the mysterious lady had been wandering. It was the Taylor family graveyard. Its exact location is no longer known, but its former existence is well documented. Records show that one of the individuals buried in the lost graveyard is Elizabeth Taylor. Evidently, someone had come across the missing burial site and stolen her headstone. Miss Taylor's grave marker was found in a local hotel by a Point Lookout park ranger. Some years later, my mother, Regina Hammett, and I went to the site where I had talked to the old woman. We searched for signs of a graveyard using metal rods to probe down through the sand. Within minutes, we located a rectangular rock-like form under about a foot of sand, and soon we located several other possible gravestones laid out in rectangular rows, as one would expect. However, when we dug up a couple of these, we discovered they were concrete foundations of an 1860 Civil War warehouse, and the Taylor family cemetery has never been found.
That's almost cooler, though. You found Civil War history, and you're like, fuck. There's no bones.
Damn it, it's just this building that also people forgot about. No, I do think that's cool, like finding any kind of history. And this is your classic, like, ghost encounter, but to me it's like the corniest one because he's like, she flat out said she lived up the beach a ways, and then he's like, and then when I turned around she was gone, but she hadn't driven away. It's like, she said she lived up the beach, she probably fucking walked home. Like, and you know, old women like my mom's like this, like, they're like, oh, she was looking for her grave or her family's graves or whatever, or her missing gravestone. It's like, Or she's some old woman that came across the fact that there used to be a graveyard there, and she was curious, and she was looking for it. Because they have nothing better to do, and I respect them for that. That's the kind of random shit that I would go looking for if I was retired and didn't have to work.
That's the type of shit I would tell people to, like, get them to leave me alone once I'm older.
That too.
It's just like,
can I help you with something? In all honesty, you just forgot. You have no idea where you're at, but you don't want to deal with another person. So you're like, I'm looking for my headstone. And they're like, okay, Grandpa.
I'm looking for my fucking gravedigger.
If you need me, I'll be exactly 300 yards to the east. Hammett has also talked about seeing a man who appears to run across the road, always in the same spot, always going the same direction, and always just after he has driven past, so he only ever sees the man in his rearview mirror. He never sees him clearly enough to make out any details, but every time he's investigated, he's found no path or signs of any human or animals having come through the area.
Just some dickhead jogging?
From the jogger's perspective, he's like, this dickhead park ranger keeps almost running me over. He's almost hit me like 80 times. I'm here every night.
The park ranger's losing his mind. Like, I have to prove it's a ghost with my car.
One day, and it's like, it's always at the same point at the same time of day. It's like, because this guy probably jogs every night on the same route. That's not unusual. So one night, this jogger's just jogging across the road, and somebody whaps him in the back of the head with his shovel to see if he's real.
Oh shit, fuck me, yeah.
Hammett is no longer a park ranger.
Well, you didn't need to do all that jogging, because you're definitely not healthy now.
So, but anyway, see, never any details, but he says the man's taking long strides, always the same kind of direction. If you track back the direction the man appears to be coming from, it takes you to the spot where the smallpox hospital used to be housed during the war, and the figure always crosses the road and disappears into the woods. Rumor has it that Confederate prisoners would sometimes try to trick their guards into transferring them to the hospital, so they pretend to have smallpox or some other disease, where they'd have a better shot at attempting an escape. In other words, easier to escape from a hospital than a prison camp, which is probably true. Probably pretty futile either way, but, you know, it gives them that opportunity. So that makes it a kind of an interesting... We've talked about what I like about these ghost stories is I don't believe that the ghosts are real, although they could be. But you get these neat little, like, history things behind it, like, you know, you find the prisoners used to pretend to get sick. And then it goes on to, like, explain, like, well, maybe that's why there's a ghost. Maybe a prisoner escaped, but he died in the woods before he could get anywhere, froze to death, or he caught smallpox, because if you get transferred to a smallpox hospital, that's not the safest place to be, but if you're trying to escape, it's worth it.
Yeah.
You know, so you can craft these really cool backstories, and I like those. You can't prove if they're real or not, but a lot of people use this kind of circular logic where you say you see a ghost and you can explain it by the story, and the story makes sense, so that explains the ghost. So they each kind of prove each other's existence.
Yeah.
But anyway, I thought that was kind of a neat take on a ghost story. You know, prisoners intentionally going to this hospital and then trying to escape and dying during their escape.
Yeah. We've talked about it before with ghost stories, and I'm on the same page as you, where it's just like, you need to have a ghost at the end to pay off the whole spooky idea of the story, but it's always the weakest part of the stories.
Right.
Like, you know, because it's always shit like that. It's like, oh, I saw some Victorian fucking chick and she didn't know what to do for a moment, and then she was gone, and I went home.
And again, I'll say it a million times.
Can we publish that, my ghost story?
Yes, exactly. It's just as credible, or just yours is just the, like, if you take all the frills away from every other ghost story, that's all that it is. It's like, and that's what
I would love it. Like, I love those shows because there's always those points where they talk to, like, the locals of a haunted area, and they all talk about shit they've experienced. And I would love to be one of those guys just clearly making shit up. And I won't let my anecdote end.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I saw this
and she was like, "You're the only one who can help me, mister." And I'm like, "Geez, me? Well, I don't know, ma'am. I guess I could fight the vampires for you.
It's awful chilly outside tonight, ma'am. I don't know if I want to go out there. And then she floated my coat over to me, and I was like, well, I guess if it means that much to you.
Well, gosh darn, I guess we're going out. That's like half the fucking
Then Gary
episode.
Busey appeared. Yeah.
And then George Clooney said, that's why you're my best friend, Ben.
So anyway, that's another one of his stories. He's got a lot of them, but Jerry Sword, who, as I mentioned before, was the park manager when Hammett first started, of course, experienced a number of his own strange occurrences.
When Hamlet first started.
Hammett is a weird name, but I can't say it without picturing Hammond, as in like Jurassic Park, John Hammond. I think John was his first name.
That's the guy who caused all this shit, right?
Yeah, the old like Santa Claus looking dude.
It would be great if we had T-Rexes. It's like, why? Nobody stopped to be like, why would that be good?
It clearly was. But you needed him, so at the end you could be like, this was a terrible mistake. It's like,
you needed somebody who Jeff Goldblum could be like, you're fucking crazy is what you are. You're just out of your mind fucking wacko.
As if Jeff was the voice of reason in that movie. But I can't wait for him to be back. He's going to be in the next Jurassic Park movie.
Wasn't he? He was the voice of reason.
Well, yeah, but I mean, his character was this weird neurotic
he was neurotic,
mathematician.
But he was the only one saying
well,
you shouldn't fucking do this. This is a dumb idea.
I would argue that Grant and
watch that fucking dinner scene, and the other two are kind of like, this might not be a good idea. He's the only one being like, you guys are fucking idiots for doing this.
But what I was going to get at, Grant and the other paleontologist, I can't remember your character's name, I would argue would probably have removed from it, said it was a bad idea, but I liked how their characters were more like, this is a bad idea, and then completely overcome by getting to see in person these things that they've spent their whole life studying. You can see how that wonder would...
And that's great when it's a real sickly, cuddly, fucking... whatever the fuck that one was. It was a stegosaur? I don't know. Whatever. So, when they're not doing shit to you, it's fine. When they're raptors going for your throat, I'm on Jeff Goldblum's side.
Yeah.
That was fucked up.
T-Rex, raptors.
Fuck that guy. Both. They're fucking both really bad. A T-Rex is actually probably better than raptors, because raptors, a T-Rex...
Sneak up on you. Yeah, T-Rex not sneaking up on you. But,
yeah. Raptors, are coordinated fucking hunters.
I can't picture a T-Rex opening a door with those stubby little arms, but... anyway.
Well, if you look closely at those stubby little arms, you'll see stubby little thumbs. And those stubby little thumbs will make tools one day.
And the evolutionary, they're there so that as the thing is about to eat you, it gives you the sarcastic thumbs up. And you're like, fuck, he got me. Roasted.
That would be kind of delightful if they, freeze frame posed as they devoured you. Those Jurassic World movies came out, late enough that we know that, dinosaurs and stuff... maybe I'm wrong, but I thought they all had feathers and shit.
Yeah.
They should have retconned that to be okay, we got to redesign all these dinosaurs so they're fucking goofy ass clown birds.
Make them yellow like Big Bird. Fuck, just make it Big Bird. You're getting hunted. Man,
imagine Big Bird without all his feathers. It's probably monstrous.
Fuck, he's monstrous with his feathers.
Well, he's kind of a cartoony chap right now. You take that off, you're fucking done.
Yeah, it's when he gets on meth, he gets real skinny and his feathers fall out.
Anywho.
So, Jerry, he was the park manager. One story that they mentioned for him is that he had a dog, and it sounded like these park rangers just lived on whatever buildings on the park they decided they wanted to. And so you move to one of these houses, and the dog, there was an old Civil War road in front of the house, and the dog would sit there and just like stare and like watch, like it was watching someone or something or some things, traveling up and down the road. And occasionally it would just start barking and pulling at its chain like it was trying to like scare off a trespasser or something.
Just dogs. Like,
I was gonna say that's my exact thought. It's fucking creepy. I'll give you that. Dogs and cats.
They feel the same way about ghosts and demons as they do about squirrels. Like
and dust particles. I mean, they'll sit and they'll bark at nothing, literally nothing. Like they're just.
And again, my fucking dog just went off.
So these ghost people, they'll say, oh, well, it's because they can see things that humans can't. It's like, or they're just fucking dumb. Like, have you met a dog? They're smart. They can be very, very smart, but they're also very, very dumb. Just like humans.
Yeah.
But anyway, so.
You bring up a dog, I raise you the dumb hick bringing out a shotgun because something went bump in the woods.
Right. It sounded like a coyote, but I know it couldn't be one because Bigfoot. It's like, wait, how'd you make that connection? It's like, because Bigfoot. Okay.
Well, I knew it couldn't be a coyote because I watched porn and I knew God was coming to punish me.
At the lighthouse itself, Sword would sometimes hear the sound of someone snoring loudly in the kitchen, which is my favorite ghost ever. It doesn't do anything. It just snores. It's a sleepy ghost.
Oh.
He'd frequently... And that, to be honest, out of all these haunting things, the sound of snoring, for like a lot of people, I can't stand snoring. It drives me nuts. My dad, when I was growing up, he used to have apnea. I don't think, a lot of times it wasn't identified as that back then, but he snored so fucking loud that, it would be hard to sleep some nights. So that's one of my like pet peeve noises. So if I had a fucking snoring ghost, you couldn't even like elbow them and be like, wake the fuck up, you're snoring. You'd be like...
Yeah, at that point.
Like, now that's terror to me.
It would have to take a lot out of a haunting to get me to like sell a house or something. And that would probably do it for me because it's just like, he's a fucking awful...
The only thing I can think of that would be worse would be a loudly chewing ghost. Like one of those ghosts that's just like smacking its lips and chewing on something. And I don't mean in like a grisly, like ghoul eat your bones sort of way. Like just like he's...
Just like an obnoxious roommate.
Yeah, yeah. He'd often hear voices out front or in the front yard or the backyard, but upon investigating would find the area vacant. Fishermen would sometimes report hearing cries for help out in the river, but upon investigation would find no signs of anyone in distress or otherwise, like just nobody at all. Miss Berg was
they heard a cry for help, they never went after it. It's like, fool me once. A lot of people drowned.
They actually see you in their spotlight, like flailing in the water, and like, nice try, ghost. I tried last time and you weren't here. I know you're not real.
Raise your game, but I ain't falling for it.
There was a woman named Miss Berg who lived in the lighthouse for some time. Her first night there, she reported hearing the sound of someone wearing heavy, old-fashioned boots walking up and down the hallway, which is pretty astute of an observation. Like, I don't know what old sounding boots sound like. Like, I get that they don't have like the tennis shoe soles like we have now, but
I'm old. Old
boot.
That's a very good point. I have no idea what the fuck that means.
Because you have heavy footsteps. I get heavy footsteps, and it could sound like, an old lighthouse keeper trudging. I'm fat and unathletic. I have heavy footsteps. I'm not a ghost, and I don't wear old boots. Whatever. She also said that one of the rooms occasionally had a very bad odor at night. So circling back to that, it's like, well, maybe there's just something like dying in your floorboards. Whatever. Sometimes she'd hear the voice of a woman singing from the top of the stairs. She could never make out the song, but she could tell it was like a happy song. It wasn't like a forlorn, like, whatever. So that's my kind of ghost there, I guess, if you're going to get some, like, get the ghost of Tina Turner or something just belting out, power ballads. Guests who would stay at our house would report similar experiences. And then I didn't even bother to write the words, the end. That's just the end of my notes. I'm clearly in a hurry. But those are like, they're like most of these places, there's dozens and dozens of these kind of stories. You can look up, I guess Sword, the park manager, had even seen like shadowy figures running through the house one night, that kind of stuff. It's like I say, it basically checks off every box of like haunted place, the cold spots, the seeing figures in period clothing, like you were talking about, hearing voices. But again, what I liked about it is you have all that, and you have the interesting lighthouses in general. Like I said, they tend to be like these lonely, although this one's not in the middle of, it was in the middle of nowhere for the time, but it's like in the woods. It wasn't like you're out on some like rocky surf beaten crop in the middle of the ocean. But, lighthouses just inherently have this kind of spooky, lonely vibe to them. And then you add to it, it's like, yeah, we had this spooky, lonely lighthouse place, and then we made it a Civil War prisoner camp where thousands of people died horrible deaths.
Might as well double down on
how
fucking creepy we made everything here.
Like I said, it's a place where some horrible history happened, but it's great if you're trying to come up with a haunted place.
If in like 100 years, there's going to be a like spooky theme park based after your shit. And I don't know about this place because I didn't get that into it, but it's funny to me how many of these places are like, it's the tragic history, and it led it to become the most haunted saloon or the most haunted outhouse or the most haunted whatever. These places always turn that into a big cash grab tourist attraction. It's like, oh, shucks, we're making money off of this, which also lends to some of my disbelief in these stories, because any little thing that happens, they're going to blow out of proportion because they're trying to get visitors. At the same time, there's absolutely ghosts. How else do you explain I got all this money?
If there weren't any ghosts, then why would we be selling this I saw a ghost t-shirt in the gift shop for $50?
Why would they bring me all this gold?
But I say that like that they turn these into these like kind of corny touristy attractions. If I was ever in the area of Point Lookout Lighthouse, I sure as hell want to stop now, because I'd be like, I want to see this for myself. And also, as much as I say this is stupid and it doesn't exist, I would not be interested in staying there by myself overnight.
I would.
Now, if you paid me to do it,
I'd prefer.
I'd do it
friends, but I'll fucking do it.
I like I said, I'll do it if you pay me, but I'm not going to do it on my own just for the hell of it.
I don't even need to get paid. I'll get money my own way. Like here's the deal. You give me just some of those like cameras that the Survivor Man dude had, and just let me go off and let me rake in the dough.
That's why I couldn't be when you're in all these dark places by yourself and you're recording like the audio and stuff, and then you bring them back and your paranormal team's listening, and they're like, oh, you can clearly hear a ghost moaning. And you're like, yeah, that's a ghost. And they're like, what's that thudding, fapping sound in the background? You're like, oh, man, that's clearly the sound of bear. You're like, that's clearly the sound of bare feet.
TMI, but like I can tell you that I don't moan that much. But I like the idea of me putting on a show now that I know cameras are running.
Fuck it, I'm in this lighthouse by myself. I can go all out.
I would love to get all this like camera equipment, like have it like produced and funded for me to go to all these haunted places, and I just waste every opportunity because I just have to jack off and during every investigation.
They turn the UV light on and everything starts glowing.
The thing is, like, you see me and people are so horrified watching me, they don't notice what is clearly a ghost behind me also appalled.
The ghost is
at what I'm
horrified.
doing
It's like,
to their home.
yeah, exactly. The ghost has this look on his face like, oh, I can't believe I just had to watch that.
What the fuck? Get out of my graveyard, you sick bitch. Well, with that image in your heads, guys, thanks for listening.
This is a show that clearly goes places.
Yeah, we're starting October Spooky Fest off with a bang.
I thought you said Spoogie Fest. My bad.
Sploogie Fest.
Yeah. Anyway, if you made it through the show, I don't know why, but thanks for listening.
You did it.
We're not guaranteeing that every October show will be something spooky.
I can guarantee I will jack off before the end of every episode.
I prefer before the start of every episode, if you please. But
well, I have to get to the spooky punchline. All right. With that horrible thought, hopefully gone by next week. Wow, the cops are showing up to arrest me. Yeah. They're like, you're a thought criminal.
Again, remember, Ben Matlock shows up first on the credits. This is all his fault.
Yeah, thanks for listening. We'll be back next week. Toodaloo.
Toodles.